While most of humanity throughout history searched for and found meaning in faith-based ideologies, following the traditions and religions of their parents, a few set out on a mission of discovery. They looked to the world around them as their guide and followed where the evidence took them. Rather than putting faith in doctrine and dogma, they trusted their innate sense that a greater truth was waiting to be discovered. Together and over time, they made clear over and over what Socrates told us so long ago, that true wisdom comes to each of us when we realize how little we understand about life, ourselves, and the world around us. Thanks to specific principles of reasoning based on observable, repeatable, and measurable evidence known as science, humanity entered a period of discovery unmatched in our history. Knowledge has been newly acquired, corrected, and integrated with previous discoveries to the point that our lives today would be completely unrecognizable from just 100 years ago. The scientific method seeks to minimize our biases and beliefs, leaving only facts. It starts with an idea, any idea, no matter how crazy it sounds. Once you've worked out the specifics of your idea, you have a hypothesis. You then test your hypothesis, and if the evidence doesn't support it, it stays a hypothesis. But if your experiments support it, you now have a theory. Theories are often mistaken for guesses, but they are not speculative or based on a guess. A scientific theory is an explanation for why things work or how things happen, and it can be tested repeatedly and reliably. Scientific law is the point where there is basically universal agreement and typically describes a set of specific circumstances such as E equals mc squared or the law of conservation, that matter and energy can be neither created nor destroyed. Peer review is another important scientific technique of verifying evidence and minimizing bias. Work by one or more people is reviewed by one or more people with similar knowledge and experience. Scientists are operating at the limits of our understanding. An honest scientist has to walk a fine line between confidence and humility. Ironically, the more unsure you are, the more credibility you are likely to have. Many scientists contributed to the vast amount of knowledge we take for granted. Some of them, their accomplishments and shortcomings, very briefly, are as follows. 1564, Galileo Galilei is born. He becomes known as one of many fathers of modern science. In his 1623 book, The Assayer, he describes the universe as a grand book written in the language of mathematics. He was ultimately sentenced to life under house arrest, and all of his written works, past and future, were banned for the heresy of claiming the Earth not only moved, but orbited the Sun, something Copernicus worked out 100 years earlier and Aristarchus of Samos theorized almost 2,000 years before. 1687, Isaac Newton published his work on inertia and the laws of motion. He described gravity mathematically to measure the effects of tides and path of comets, among many other things, ending any doubt of Earth's rotation around the sun, at least among scientists. He was also a mean-spirited loner and Christian Puritan who trashed the reputations of two other scientists he saw as competitors, and he condemned dozens of people to public hanging, disembowelment, and burning at the stake, although to be fair, these were common executions at the time. Then there's his diary account of threatening to burn his parents' house down with them inside. 1771, Marianne Palsy married 28-year-old Antoine Lavoisier at the age of 13 to avoid marrying a 50-year-old count who threatened her father's job if she didn't. She started helping her husband in his lab at the birth of modern chemistry. She translated and critiqued leading works from English to French and kept meticulous notes and diagrams of the experiments she helped her husband perform. Their work was instrumental in standardizing the scientific method. Her father and Antoine were executed on the same day during the French Revolution. Antoine was exonerated shortly after, but remained headless. He also helped create the metric system. One of his apprentices was none other than E.I. DuPont, founder of today's DuPont Company. 1859, Charles Darwin publishes On the Origin of Species, presenting evidence for the theory of evolution. But a year before that, he jointly published papers with Alfred Russel Wallace, who came to the same conclusion through his own travels and study. Wallace later won a bet with a flat earther, showing the curvature of the Earth between 2 points set the same height above a canal. He also publicly defended spiritualism and claimed a picture of him with his dead mother on his lap was real. It was taken by a fraudulent spirit photographer. The Renaissance, Enlightenment, and rise of scientific thought presented a direct challenge to religious institutions who had dominated for thousands of years. Suddenly, secular societies were popping up, and leading thinkers were writing philosophy outside of church doctrine, such as Baruch Spinoza, who said, "In demonstrating the truths of nature, does not truth reveal its own self?" Voltaire, who said, "To pray to God is to flatter oneself that with words one can alter nature." Thomas Paine wrote, "My own mind is my own church. All national institutions of churches, whether Jewish, Christian, or Turkish, appear to me no other than human inventions, set up to terrify and enslave mankind and monopolize power and profit." Thomas Jefferson campaigned for a secular United States and wrote the Jefferson Bible, in which he dropped the Old Testament and cut the Bible from 1,281 pages to 103. He said, "Fix reason firmly in her seat, and call to her tribunal every fact, every opinion. Question with boldness even the existence of a God, because, if there be one, he must more approve the homage of reason than of blindfolded fear." What science did and continues to do is expand our knowledge of our world, the universe, life, and ourselves. But it cannot make our choices for us. It is up to us to decide what to do with that information. Do we hide it, distort it, do we lie, or do we share it and learn from it and do our best to understand it while helping others understand as well?